Today we're going to review another film recommended to me by a Subscribe Star supporter. This is the 1985 sci-fi film Enemy Mine, starring Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. The screenplay was written by Edward Kamara, and it was directed by Wolfgang Petersen. The story is based on the Barry B. Lonniere's novella, also called Enemy Mine, from 1979. The basic story might sound very familiar to you. A human being and an alien soldier are stranded on an alien planet and have to work together and put their differences aside, learn to trust each other in order to survive. Now that's a story I've seen many times in science fiction, and it's actually been done in film and television far more frequently than I realized. I'll just give you a few examples here. There was the Season 7 Stargate SG-1 episode, also called Enemy Mine, which is based on this film. A Star Trek The Next Generation episode from the third season called The Enemy, where Geordi is stranded on a planet with a Romulan. And a Star Trek Enterprise episode called Dawn. But the basic premise is much older than those examples. There was The Defiant Ones, which the TNG episode is based on. The Defiant Ones is a 1958 film starring Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier about two escaped prisoners shackled together who must work together to survive. I'm sure there have been other adaptations of this premise in pop culture that you could think of, so I suppose it all comes down to the quality of the execution of such a story. Like many classic sci-fi films I've reviewed on this channel, Enemy Mine became a cult classic over the years, despite not being a commercial success at the time. It cost $29 million to make, not including marketing costs, and it made just $12 million at the box office. And by the way, I haven't adjusted for inflation or anything. Enemy Mine is not a bad movie, but I have to be honest, I'm not a fan of the concept of such a story, which, like I've said, we've seen done several times now in science fiction. The film is very well realised as a production with solid visual effects and set design for the time. Both actors put in really great performances, and I was especially impressed with how Louis Gossett Jr. made his character of Jeriba seem really truly alien. Though I found the makeup a bit distracting at times, specifically the obvious hole in the mask he's wearing, the hole around his mouth, so you can see his real lips. So after a brief firefight between Drac and Earth ships, Willis Davidge and Jeriba crash land on a planet, and after initially fighting each other, they end up working together and even becoming friends, the crux of the story being about their growing friendship. As they try to survive on this barely hospitable planet, they work together and build a shelter, survive against predators, and even teach each other their languages. There's some good camaraderie and occasional moments of levity and humour that breaks the tension. Davidge eventually nicknames Jeriba Jerry and learns about Drac culture and spiritual philosophy. During a particularly bad meteor shower, they realise they're starting to go crazy alone on this planet. Davidge decides to leave their camp to get help and find a way off the planet, but Jerry stays behind. I have to say the location shooting is fantastic in this film. The studio work was shot in Germany, but the outdoor locations for the alien landscape were shot in the island of Lanzarote in the Canary Islands, which works really well selling the idea of a volcanically active planet. Davidge discovers that the planet has been visited by outlawed human miners who use Drac people as slave workers. These miners are known as scavengers, and they illegally strip planets of their precious ores. Davidge goes back to explain this situation to Jerry, but discovers that Jerry is pregnant because his species procreates by self-fertilization. Dennis Quaid's reaction to this news is priceless and actually very funny. So one night they're asleep in their camp and they're attacked by a particularly nasty creature from the planet, but a snowstorm erupts and destroys their camp, forcing them to flee to a new location. Jerry gives birth and ultimately passes away during labour. Davidge agrees to raise the child and teaches him the ways of the Drac, from what he's been told. The child's name is Zamis, and it's at this point the film really changes its dynamic. Zamis learns from Davidge and calls him Uncle. Long story short, they discover a scavenger base, and Davidge fights some of them there. He's injured and presumed dead, and later he's brought back to the space station from the beginning of the movie. They're concerned that he's defected to the Drac people. Well, he steals a ship and heads back to the scavenger base, and essentially helps to liberate the Drac slaves. The story has now changed considerably from a simple two enemies trying to survive on a planet, and this is where it turns into a straight action sci-fi movie. Well, Davidage is true to his word. He rescues Zamis and brings him back to the Drac homeworld, and this is where the film concludes, with Davidage being honoured by the Drac people. Enemy Mine is an intense character-driven story about two very well-developed characters, but I felt the story kind of loses its focus after Jerry dies. I never liked the adaptations of this story on Star Trek, for example, like I've said. I found the Geordi-centric episode The Enemy to be among the more boring episodes of TNG, and I felt the same way about Dawn on Enterprise. Two characters stuck on a planet trying to survive with a few talky campfire type scenes is a recipe for a slow and plodding narrative. Now, I see this kind of story as being ideal for a short TV movie or something. It doesn't feel sufficient for an almost 2-hour length theatrical movie. As a result, Enemy Mine is a bit of a slow burn, and the film ends somewhat abruptly and not in an entirely satisfactory manner. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. The Dave Cullen Show is made possible by you, my generous subscribers. If you'd like to support my work, head on over to my Subscribe star, linked below in the description box, and for a pledge of as little as $1 per month, you can help to keep the show going. I'm also doing one-to-one monthly subscriber chats. Thanks again. Take care.